It's not known much. There have been different dates, but no one knows exactly when it started. Like all other literatures of the world, English literature began with poetry. And it started back in the 5th century. It's believed that the earliest poems in English were written between 450 AD and 1066 AD. This is the time period, approximate time period when poetry has come into existence in English, the earliest poems. This period is said to be Anglo-Saxon period. In those days, there was no printing press, so there was no chance of recording their works. There was no system of keeping a record of the writing. As a result, it was not possible for us to know today who wrote what kind of poems, what they wrote exactly. Of course, not all. Some poems which were written during this period were not known. I mean to say the writers were not known. When exactly they were written were not known. The earliest English poems were anonymous. As I have told you, anonymous is something that refers to um, like writings that remained unknown. Writers remained unknown. When exactly they were written remained unknown. Under them, there are certain works like Beowulf, 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 and then the works like The Seafarer, and then The Husband's Message. There's one more work called The Wanderer. So such books were there. Even today, we do not know when they have come, when they were written, who wrote. That is why the term anonymous happened. There were certain common themes which the poets during this time have chosen while writing their poems. Like the themes were related to religiousness, faith, pagan faith, especially that is related to Christianity, Christian faith, or something that is related to heroic deeds. And there were also certain other themes that were taken from the Bible. And of course, all these were part of the poems, the themes that have been chosen by the writers during this period. And the heroic stories, or as we can say, the heroic stories are mostly based on Germanic folklore. We know what is folklore. Lore is a song. So stories based upon Germanic traditions. These poems were written in alliterative Old English style. We probably must be noticing them only in their poems. We do not know about. These poems are, like long and lengthy lines, unrhymed lines. In that kind of style, there is a poem called a hymn, Hymn, a hymn. It's a poem written by an illiterate herdsman whose name was Cadman, and it was written in the year in 685 sorry 658 AD. It is considered to be the earliest poem that was written during the beginning of Anglo-Saxon period. Anyhow, the dates of the works are not yet known, and that is that those works remain anonymous. Coming to the English language that occupied great prominence, the reason is that basically it occupied the place of Latin. English language replaced Latin to a larger extent. And here, Geoffrey Chaucer's name is to be mentioned. He is said to be one of the epitomes or pioneers of English poetry. After Chaucer's period, that is particularly in the 14th century, it looked as if there's a lot of gap or else vacuum till the Elizabethan period. Then came Renaissance. What is Renaissance? It's a movement wherein there was tremendous change in art, literature, learning, and the impact of Renaissance was great on literature. The Norman conquest took place in 1066 AD. After that, English language had taken a great and significant turn. Between 1066 and 1550, which is said to be the Middle Age period, English language developed to a very great extent. There was certain standard in the usage of English language. However, it's not the English that we do use now. The English that existed during this period was quite different, but even then, there was tremendous change in the English language that was used before this period. The poets of this period also used the alliterative Old English language to a certain extent. The lines were long and lengthier, and then certain poems had been written in free verse or else the blank verse, and then they used, of course, certain new trends have come using meters and rhyme in the verse lines also. Then the subjects chosen for poetry, that is the themes for these poems that were written during this period, included freedom and then religious faith, freedom to use or freedom to talk about religious faith, morality, and then love. In this period, Renaissance took place and it actually broadened the perspective of the thoughts of the people. The Renaissance was a fervent period of European cultural, art, literature, and then political and economic rebirth. We can say it's a rebirth. Generally, this Renaissance has been said to have taken place between 14th and 17th centuries. It in fact promoted the rediscovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art. There were several great thinkers. Statesmen, scientists, artists during this period in human history who thrived during this era, and there was huge global exploration that opening up new lands and new cultures to European countries and commerce. Commerce also tremendously developed. The Renaissance is credited with bridging. It's something like a bridging the gap between Middle Ages and today's modern civilization. It looks like bridging. I mean to say, filling up the gap. Now comes, how did this Renaissance take place? What were the changes? It looked like there's a shift from darkness to light. There was darkness earlier and it shifted to light. The Renaissance began during the Middle Ages, a period that took place between the fall of ancient Rome in 476 AD and the beginning of the 14th century. These Europeans made certain advances or improvement or development in art and science. This period was also said to be Dark Age or Dark Ages, these particular years. This time, during this period of Dark Ages, people suffered. There was famine. People were ignorant. And then there were huge, number of deaths due to the Black Death. Pandemics were existing during the time. Pandemic specifically called as the Black Death existed during this time. Some historians believe that actually this period of suffering has been more exaggerated than it actually took place. Poetry remained anyhow as a larger beneficiary. Renaissance roughly took place between 1509 and went on till the Restoration period, till about 1660. That was when the Renaissance existed. During the 14th century, there was a strong cultural movement called as Humanism. This is a movement. This gained momentum in Italy. It gained momentum. The spirit of this movement gained in Italy. Along with several other principles, humanism also promoted the concept that man is the center of the universe. People should be able to achieve achievements in education, classical arts, literature, science, and that there should be developments in all spheres of life. And this was what was wanted and sought during this period. In 1450, we just discussed one part. Till then, there was no way of saving the information or else saving the writings of these works because there was no other source. But then in the year 1450, Caxton invented the first printing machine. It was printing press that allowed for the improvement of communication throughout Europe and also for spreading the ideas more quickly. Please wait, ma. Students, am I clear so far? Students, am I clear so far? Please reply.
Yes, ma'am, you are not able to see, ma'am.
No, no, I just have closed my video for a second.
Okay, ma'am.
Am I clear so far about the topic?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. 2 minutes, 2 minutes. I'll just
Okay,
check.
ma'am.
Students, does it get cut in 40 minutes or does it extend to 1 hour? Students, please reply. Does it automatically get disconnected after 40 minutes?
Why, ma'am?
No, because it's Zoom. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, ma'am.
No, I'm asking you. Does it get disconnected? Does the Zoom connection get disconnected after 40 minutes?
Okay.
Cut
Yes,
అవుతుందా లేకపోతే extend
yes,
అవుతుందా
yes, ma'am.
automatically?
It goes off after 40 minutes.
It continues, it goes away, cancelled.
No, we have to log in again, ma'am, after 40 minutes.
Got it.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. There is some problem with the net connection. I'll go with audio, ma'am. Is it okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
You are going to throw to the textbooks, ma'am?
Presently, I'll take the help of the textbook anyhow. But then,
Yeah.
you see, we'll be dealing with other topics also. So today, just let me discuss with you the introduction to British literature anyhow.
Tomorrow you are going to textbook, ma'am?
Yes. Today also,
Okay.
I'll take some of the topics of the textbook.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes. So let's see. Now we were talking about Chaucer's period in 14th century. After Chaucer left, I mean to say after he died in the 14th century, it appeared that there was nobody who wrote like Chaucer till the Elizabethan period. As I told you, the Renaissance, and then next comes the invention of block printing machine, which was done by Caxton in the year 1474. This has given a great way for the great writers, the poets of this period, to publish their work. Next comes Thomas Wyatt. We need to know about him. He was said to be the earliest English Renaissance poets. It is said that he made several innovations in English poetry. And then after Thomas Wyatt, we come across the name Henry Howard, also called as the Earl of Surrey. He was the one who introduced the system of writing in sonnet form. What is a sonnet? A sonnet is a poem written in 14 lines. It came from Italy to England in the early 16th century, and Henry Howard was the one who introduced this sonnet form and brought it into England in the early 16th century. Now comes the Elizabethan period. In the Elizabethan period, which is between 1558 and 1603, this is the period. This period witnessed great developments. Like what? Like the people of England started looking into the themes and the verse forms. What are the verse forms? Poetic forms. And they started looking into other European countries and traditions in order to collect the themes for the writings of England. That means people of England looked into other European nations and studied the models and verse forms of the other European countries. And they started collecting the classical sources and they wanted to adapt them into their literature. Here we come across one of the epitomes or the stalwarts of the English literature, Edmund Spenser, who wrote the work called Fairy Queen. This falls under this category. During the same period, We also come across the name William Shakespeare, who entered the literature or else the literary scene through his songs and sonnets, the work that has brought about a great change in the poetic field, in literature. Shakespeare was the one who acquired the name with, like the Shakespearean sonnet. And he was the one to bring about changes to the existing Italian sonnet form because he used both Petrarchan sonnets as well as Italian sonnets. The theme of Shakespearean sonnets is mostly love. We will come to know why. We'll come to know why. Shakespeare undoubtedly was the finest playwright. His plays and poems are so rich that even today we remember his works. And there is nobody who we can parallel him with any other person till date in the literary history of England. Then comes a period called Jacobean and Caroline age. We will be reading the works of two important people in today's class, John Milton and Shakespeare. John Milton belongs to this Jacobean and Caroline age. He is said to be one of the greatest poets of British literature who existed during the ending period of Renaissance and the early stages of Restoration period. After Renaissance, there comes the Restoration period. His great work, Paradise Lost, you must be knowing this name. His great work, Paradise Lost, came in the year 1667. Then comes the Augustan age. In this period, we have several writers like John Dryden, Samuel Butler, Alexander Pope, and then we have Samuel Johnson, Jonathan Swift, who wrote in satirical verse. The poetry of this period is something like, again, an opportunity for the poets who wrote about wits and creativity. They gave the way for wits and creativity. There was huge domination of satire, wit, and it's something like a challenge to the readers to test their intellectuality. Next comes British poetry. British poetry took a great turn with the publication of lyrical ballads in the year 1798. Lyrical ballads is the name of the work. And then there is one more development during the period, which is said to be free verse. Free verse means what? There won't be any rhyme and rhythm. Number of lines will not be like 4 or 3 or 2 or else like 5. It won't be like calculated number of lines in every stanza. It's something like it's called as free verse. Poets like William Blake, Wordsworth, Lord Byron, Shelley, Keats, all these poets wrote in this form. Of course, blank verse or else free verse is said to have become very popular during this period. Next comes the Romantic era, and it's followed by the Victorian period. During this period, there was a great thirst for knowledge. People wanted to know more and more about life. Scientific developments were there. That is why this period is said to have seen the domination or dominated by scientific temper. Poets like Lord Tennyson, Matthew Arnold, and then Robert Browning, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, all these are very famous during this period. These poets have chosen a style called dramatic monologue. It's a poetic form. Dramatic monologue. This was the form that these writers have chosen. During the turn of the century, we have new writers. They are called modernist writers. Among them, we have the names of Yeats, Hopkins, T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound. Such poets were there. After this, we have war poetry. And here we come across the names like Wilfred Owen, Isaac Rosenberg, Rupert Brooke. These were the writers of war poetry, and of course, that also comes under the modernist poetry. The later part of the 20th century had a huge development in poetry. Number of poets came from England and America, and they produced great poetry. We have writers like Stephen Spender, Philip Larkin. Such writers were there, and they brought about huge revolution in poetry. After that, we have Commonwealth. Anyhow, then comes the post-colonial writers. This is something like a mirror to how British writing, particularly related to British poetry, has come into existence. So now we will go to the two most important poems, three poems. Of course, I'll give you a minutest detail, and it covers, of course, some important points related to William Shakespeare and John Milton also. Let's know about William Shakespeare now. The period which is said to be Elizabethan age when Shakespeare was living. This marks the important and characteristic feature of Elizabethan age with its important features of religious tolerance. The Queen Elizabeth was ruling during this time, 1550 to 1620. This period is said to be Elizabethan age. There was religious freedom, and this freedom allowed the writers and artists to flourish. There was increase of manufacturing towns, which provided employment to thousands of people. Church, of course, was there. It was taking care of the poor. The wealthy people actually had to pay taxes in order to provide some source for the poor. So say there was some kind of income for the poor people also. So this was something important about this period. There was increase in wealth, there was increase in employment opportunities, living conditions improved, social life improved, and apart from that, the literary activities improved. It was a period of religious freedom, intellectual freedom, patriotism, love for the country has no limits. There was peace both inside the nation and outside the nation. Now, William Shakespeare, who lived, and who wrote during the rule of Queen Elizabeth I of England. He was a great poet and dramatist. We all know this. He was baptized. He was born in a place called Avon in England. That is why there's a church at Stratford on Avon where he was born, and he was also baptized on 26th April 1564. It's a common thing to baptize children on the third day after the birth. We know that in the Christian trend. He started writing for the sake of enactment of dramas or its performance on the stage in the late 1580s. During that period, he started writing for the drama. His earliest work was the three parts of Henry VI. Henry VI were the earliest ones, which were written between 1590 and 1901. After this, he wrote several plays. Anyhow, the best comedies are A Midnight Summer's Dream, As You Like It, because we'll be having a poem from As You Like It. And then we have The Merchant of Venice and Twelfth Night. These four are said to be the best known comedies. And then we have the tragedies that include Hamlet, Othello, Macbeth, and King Lear. And we have got the special thing in him writing in sonnet form the 14 lines poems. He continued to write till 1685. I mean to say, publications went on till 1685. Now, in the syllabus part, we have got a poem called Sonnet 116, Sonnet 116. He wrote totally 154 sonnets, and they were published in the year 1609. Some sonnets also were published later, which became a part of some of his plays. Now, I'll tell you the theme in Sonnet 116. I'll give you a brief outline of this. In this poem, which is written in 14 lines, following the pattern of iambic pentameter with the rhyme schemes, and then the following pattern, the Italian and the English sonnet form. Shakespeare's sonnet shows successive images and observations, and he writes about love in this poem. There is the nature of ideal love. What is love? The poet's idea is to tell us that in spite of love depends on physical attraction, no doubt about it, but true love is not subject to anything. The characteristic feature of true love is that love will be there whether the partner is there or not. Whether the partner is there or not. That is what the writer wants to tell us. In this poem, yes, he compares love to a star. Will the star go away? Will the star change? It doesn't. It's permanent. Just like that, his love is permanent and real. He says in this poem, even though the people in love may change as the time passes, the love will not change. People may change. He says that no man who has really loved, he doesn't change. Though he changes, his love never changes. By comparing love to a star, he uses the figurative speech called metaphor. Metaphor, direct comparison. Love to a star. Love is compared to a star. He is so confident in his opinion. He says, no man has ever loved before if he is wrong. Shakespeare also uses the elements of time in the poem. He says that time does not have any boundaries or limitations. And even if the people in the relationship change, the love does not. This is the theme of this poem, Sonnet 116. I think if we look into his personal life, it is said that he was unhappily married to Anne Hathaway. She was the one who is his wife, who was his wife. His marriage life was not happy one, as history tells us through certain books. He says there is no reason why two people who are in real love should not be together. Why? Perhaps he is showing his feelings in the poem for that unknown young man for whose sake he wrote the poem. We don't know for whose sake he wrote this sonnet. It might be for he himself, we don't know, or somebody else. Probably he is expressing about that person's feelings. And it is said that Shakespeare was unhappily married to Anne Hathaway. Perhaps he is trying to rationalize his feelings for that man. And then he says, even if one is already married, why can't two people who are in love be together? And he says, love just does not just stop because some changes take place. Love is true love and it will last forever. He wants to tell to the readers that if love changes, people don't change. People may change, but love does not change. And he introduces beautiful imagery and, um, like the thoughts that ponder again and again. And here, the readers have to understand that love is something that does not shift, change, or move according to the passage of time. There may be storms. Let people be defeated. Let people become weak. But Shakespeare decides to personify love since it is something that is never destroyed. It can never be defeated. People may be defeated, but love is never defeated. There may be storms in the life of people, but love does not change. That is why he uses metaphor, the figure of speech, comparing the North Star, the star, to discuss love. So, this is about Sonnet 116. Next comes the Seven Ages of Man. This is also by William Shakespeare. This is, in fact, something that looks like monologue, only one person speaking, or soliloquy. When we read it in isolation, it appears to us as if only one person is speaking. There is too much of use of metaphors, rich use of metaphors. The poet appears as if he is talking about philosophy or Vedant. The speaker here says that man's life is divided into seven stages. The first one is the one when he is born, how he appears to be, how he looks like.
Infant.
In this poem, the writer says the first stage is the infant stage. He cries, he is in the hands of the nurse. He cries and vomits most of the time. Now he is growing, the infant is growing. He becomes a schoolboy, the second stage, but he does not want to go to school. The next stage is that of a lover. He is completely involved in the thoughts of his beloved, his lover, and writes beautiful poetry on her beauty. Now he grows older. He goes to the army. He joins the army. He's short tempered. He's ambitious in his nature. Now comes the age of maturity. Wisdom grows. He becomes matured person. He becomes a family man who acts like a judge. Do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, advising people. He looks serious. He is authoritative in nature. Then comes the stage of man who becomes older and becomes weak. His authority begins to grow less. His voice trembles. He can't walk. He can't talk properly. He can't walk properly. The last stage is that stage when man loses his teeth, loses his eye power, loses his hearing power. This is the last. After that, man exits from the stage, the last stage. So these are the 7 stages of man. He compares here, saying that particularly he uses metaphor. He says, all the men are actors and the world is a stage. He says the world itself is a stage. We have come here, all of us have come here to act and then leave. That's it. That is what the role of a man is. Very short poem, of course. This is from As You Like It. Now we will be looking into the last one. Let's look into the structure of the poem and the free verse in your books that's available in the books. And we have also got use of similes and metaphors and why what is this philosophical tone? Why he is talking about philosophy? He's talking about philosophy because he's saying that, see, he's born as an infant, growing child, he goes to school, then he becomes a lover. After that, a matured man, and then he becomes authoritative in nature. Then comes, he becomes serious. After that, he reduces talking to people. This is where the philosophy comes into place. Therefore, the poet is talking in philosophical tone. Now comes the last one for the day, John Milton's On His Blindness. As discussed already, the Puritan age when John Milton existed. It's like a rebirth of moral nature. It's the reawakening of intellectual, especially in the 15th and 16th centuries. There are two most important things that we need to know about this period: personal righteousness, civil and religious liberty. These are the two most important concepts. It said that man is honest and free. He wanted to make himself more honest and free. And the spirit of the moment is deeply religious. And Puritan age has given the most important works. We can see that in John Milton's Paradise Lost. There are three important works of John Milton. John Milton existed between 1608 and 1674. He wrote several elegies also in Latin. The most important works are Ode on the Morning of Christ's Nativity. The next one is On Shakespeare. And then comes Paradise Lost, followed by Paradise Regained. Here, let's know something about this poem. On His Blindness. What appears to you about this title? What appears to you about this title? What comes to your mind? On his blindness. Doesn't it look like as if he lost his eyesight? Yes, he is losing his eyesight. So,
Yes.
right? Yes. It expresses his feelings as a blind man. The poet thinks that he will not be able to give service to God, serve God, because his sight will be gone. As the poem progresses, he begins to believe that God wants him to go on working, though he loses his sight. At the end of the poem, he says he is happy, he is assured that he is serving God just like other angels do. Angels also serve God, they pray to God, and they wait for the orders of God. Just like that, he is also one like the angels who is serving God and who is waiting for the orders of God. The poet begins with the word when, because he is introducing his idea in the very beginning itself. He says that half of his life is over. The sight will be gone because you know that he has become blind. After becoming blind only, he wrote several works. He has now lost his eyesight. And we know that if anybody loses eyesight, there is only darkness around. But then it's a challenging task for a writer like Milton. So he says, because there is no eyesight, how can he write? That's a question. This is just a load from the God who must have bestowed his blessings upon him. The poet feels so sad. Yes, I have lost my eyesight. And wonders what is his talent now without eyesight, but still he wants to serve God. Such a great task, it's a challenging task. But then how should he do it? How should he serve his maker or the master after his sight is gone? He says this is a foolish thought. It's actually haunting him. He says that we should have patience, especially for him. The work of man does not please God, does not make God happy. If at all, the person is not patient enough. Have patience. Be contented. Be satisfied. God has huge kingdom. There are so many angels there. They are ready to carry God's orders. They never take risks. They just wait. What's God is going to tell us. Just like them, even Milton is waiting to get orders from God. There are some angels standing and waiting before God, similar to them. Even his service is equally valuable to God, just like the other angels. Therefore, he decides, let me have patience. He uses alliteration. What is alliteration? We'll discuss that in tomorrow's class. And then to ask himself, how would his work go because of his blindness? Because he has completely turned blind in the year 1662 itself. And he was around 44 at the time. He gathers himself and is inclined, decided to serve God, though he became blind. He says that personifying himself, patience, God does not want man's work of gifts. God is omnipotent. He forever blesses people. Therefore, Milton consoles himself. It's okay, I may not be able to serve God because I have become blind, but God will definitely bestow his blessings upon me. I will cheerfully wait patiently, and then God definitely will see how I serve him. And Milton uses paradox in the last line. So this is also a sonnet written in 14 lines, and he uses Petrarch and sonnet. So this is how the conversation goes between talking about poets' blindness and how he should have been having the patience in order to render service to God. God does not require anything from man. God just loves people. That's it. So in this unit, we have seen about Elizabethan and Puritan ages, and we have seen how peace and prosperity existed during the Elizabethan period. We spoke about Renaissance, we spoke about Restoration period, we spoke about William Shakespeare and John Milton, and the three poems of, two poems of William Shakespeare and one of John Milton. And then look into the questions, check your progress, go on answering those questions which are there in the lesson, behind the lesson. Okay, am I clear so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So here we are winding up. Students, here we are winding up. We'll be meeting the same time tomorrow.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Right now. Right now.
Can we leave, sir? Hello?